Okay. All right. Well, thank you all for joining us today. We've got some very exciting announcements. Just to introduce myself and my two colleagues that are joining us today remotely from the States. I'm Charles Armstrong. I'm the product manager for Views, for Business View, and for some exciting new things that we're going to talk about under the Street View brand today. I'm joined by Aaron Luber, who is the partnerships manager for the Jump program, the YouTube Jump program you guys may have heard about at I/O, that we also briefly showed a video of yesterday, as well as Hussein Bengali, who's the product manager for the Jump program. And these folks also have some familiarity with the Expeditions program. So we're going to take about 20 minutes to go through some exciting announcements, and then at the end we'll open this up to a Q&A session so that we can discuss any questions that you might have. Okay. So Luke Vincent, our director, mentioned yesterday that Google's mission statement is to organize the world's information to make it universally accessible and useful. Within the context of our geo-imaging products, this isn't just about placing images on the map in an accurate manner. It's really about making sure that the right images are accessible for the right person at the right time. And so one of the key things that we look at is quality, to make sure that we're telling the most representative story that we can for a place in the world. If you all have heard us, seen us use a slide like this before, I can back this with real data. It looks really scientific and accurate with lots of numbers. But the notion here is that when you publish a geolocated image to a social media platform, you gain the benefit of that immediate awareness of the social dialogue that surrounds, those announcements, those shared moments. And so that can see a lot of visibility very quickly, but they tend to flatline, right? You can think of a social media channel as being like a stream, right? Once you drop it into the stream, it goes downstream and it's never to be found again. When you publish images to a map, their utility, their usefulness for people does not diminish over time. In fact, frankly, it increases. So if you produce a great image that's associated with a place that people care about, then you find that you at least have a linear relationship with the, in terms of your impressions of that image over time. And like I said, this isn't just a broad anecdote. We can provide a real example. If you all are familiar with the Views product that we present, it's our number one contributor is a company called Panedia. And Panedia published images, really beautiful images. In fact, why don't we look at them? From the Sydney Opera House a few months ago. They published these images, which are just extraordinary, to a popular social media platform a few months ago. And they very quickly generated 30,000 impressions, which is nothing to shake a stick at. These are just gorgeous. At the same time, they also published the images to Google Maps. And what I find interesting is that these exact same images on Google Maps, 2 weeks ago I was told that they had generated 1 million impressions. And today I'm excited to announce that they've generated 1.5 million impressions. So there's literally no end in sight for this imagery. Panedia has generated over 30 million impressions on the Views platform. So clearly this is a testament to the potential when you publish images to a place. And Google Maps is obviously well known for its widely used sense of location discovery. So jumping back in here. The challenge is, let's see, the challenge that we have is it's not always terribly easy to sell this content when you have to introduce it under brands that people don't recognize. We've done a lot of looking inside Google, and we understand that the world acknowledges Street View as a brand, as a proper noun. It doesn't just mean views of streets, it means spherical content. And we've been looking over the last few years to try to figure out the best way to present professional spherical photography in context of Street View. So a few years ago, we launched Views and Business View as being branded programs that are intentionally associated with Street View. What we found, however, was that through feedback from professional photographers, both trusted photographers in the Business View program, and those that are using the Views program, is that they have to introduce themselves. Likely you have to introduce yourself as maybe being a Views or Business View photographer, and then explaining that that's sort of like Street View, but it's a separate program. And that can be difficult, right? Because you've immediately lost that credibility of, well, you're just not part of that brand that we recognize. So I am truly excited to share with you today the announcement that we are actually making Street View a brand. So this has typically been something that people recognized as being a brand, but in fact it wasn't. This was a feature of Google Maps. So today, Google Maps Street View moves out from underneath Google Maps and becomes Google Street View. And this is something that we'll be rolling out to our products as we approach mid-August. So there are no immediate changes that we ask or would even invite you to change in terms of your marketing materials or websites just yet. We'll be bringing a branding guideline to you soon, but this is the actual brand. And I think the great thing here is that this is speaking the same language that your customers already recognize. Also, just a side note, this is one of Google's most popular brands. So it's great that we finally have a sense of authority to back that. And I'm also proud to announce that today, we're bringing an actual Street View branded product to you. So we have historically had a product called Street View on Google Maps that hasn't been updated for a long time on Android. But the product itself has had about 500 million installs, so it is very widely distributed. And we went back to the drawing board about 9 months ago, started working on a new version of this application. And it's beautiful. It's a combination of business view imagery, traditional Street View imagery, views and photosphere images, and our special collects content, which is when you see in the news trucker on a camel or something like that, that's generally Google's managed content that we call special collects. So we're bringing all this together into one map. People already consider this to be Street View. We're just going to speak their language and say, yes, in fact, this is Street View. We're still going to draw a very clear distinction between content that Google owns and content that other contributors have provided. Google, we hold ourselves to some very, very stringent privacy and security standards. We ask our users to respect the same standards, but the liability as to who's responsible for those is different, of course. In this app, you'll find that we have different galleries. We're going to allow you to see your own content that you have not yet published, if you have any on your device, to view the content that you have published, to view a combination of all of the content that everyone around the world has published, and then also to see our featured content. Now, at launch, when this comes out, this is only going to focus on Google's special collects content, you know, the very high-profile things that we work on. But I can tell you we have a lot of love for the content that comes from others as well. And over the course of the next year, we'll be working on bringing in contributions from others into that featured channel. This is a great visibility tool. We are rolling this out to 500 million devices. That's a pretty ridiculous number. At that time, people will have the option to sign up for notifications. So every time there's a new featured special collect, and eventually with user-generated content, they'll be able to see and be notified of that on a fairly regular basis, like a weekly basis if they so choose. This is wonderful for us as an industry, especially as we potentially have the opportunity to rally behind the Street View brand, because we build greater awareness. And I know there's these conversations around competition in the space and how much room there is if we grow the size of the industry. But frankly, there's nothing but a promising future for us if we can build more and more awareness for this content. And so at Google, we're taking some very active efforts to do that. This app is also going to build in the photosphere capture capability that you'll know from Photosphere Camera on iOS and the Photosphere Mode on Android. So it's really a one-stop shop in terms of being able to view and create content from that sense. However, the most exciting thing that I have to share with regard to this app is something that we've been working on for a while. We started reaching out to a number of the spherical camera manufacturers, and I certainly can't mention all of them today, but I can say that we helped organize an open API standard amongst many of the players in that space, so that collectively, as new cameras are introduced onto the market, they have the opportunity to all support what is now called the Open Spherical Camera API. This is published at developers.google.com. You're definitely welcome to go and take a look. The really exciting opportunity here is that any app developer, not just Google, can build against the OSC API. And with that support built in, you gain all of the standard functionality of creating photospheres, and in a future version of the API, video as well. You can still capture video through these devices, but we have not yet ratified. We have not yet cemented what the commands for the video will look like, and we're doing that later this year. But as an initial first step, this is already wonderful. We have a number of partners that will be announcing support for this, including 2 today. Let's take a look. So Gyroptic is going to be a partner of ours, launching when we do in mid-August, as well as NCTech. These are great cameras. Gyroptic is focused, I think, on the broader consumer opportunity, the lower price point, very, very fast processing, and just a very portable form factor. NCTech has been an absolute joy to work with over the last few months. They've truly felt like a collaborator with us as well, just like Gyroptic. As we really got down to the nuts and bolts of the opportunity here, us listening to the business community, we've understood that if we took a step back, if we afforded a way for you to shoot an entire end-to-end job from introducing yourself to publishing a finished product and transferring ownership on site, if you could do that in less than 20-25 minutes and have the quality be very, up to the standards that we've all come to expect, well, that would be a game changer. And that's what we've delivered. With the application paired with these cameras, you have the ability to capture spherical images, which are stitched on device in HDR. They are delivered to the mobile application. At that time, you have the ability to immediately preview them, to check out where they are on the map, change their location if it's not right, associate it with businesses, publish them. And this is a great combination of views and business view. Once you publish them, they can remain in your account, or if you've sold them to a business, you can then transfer ownership over. So they get this sort of escrow capability where they can live in your account before you reassign them. And that functionality is largely coming in mid-August. We're still a little unclear about the ownership transfer, but the rest of that will be supported at app launch. So let's take a look for just a minute at one of these. The NCTech camera will be launching at $1,999 US. It supports 8K images. They're beautiful HDR. We're going to look at some examples in a minute. And they're delivered to the device in less than 2 minutes. Let's look at a couple of examples. I can find my mouse.
Excuse me, what was the price point again?
$1,999. And by the way, so this is an evolution of one of their existing cameras that has like a $12,000 price point. So this is, I believe, a very big win for this industry to have access to that at a much more accessible price point. So these are shot with a prototype that is basically an earlier version of this camera. And you can see the image quality is extraordinary. There's no doctoring in these images. Let's look at a couple of more really quickly here.
So is it straight out of the camera?
Straight out of the camera. So here what we're looking at is a great example of HDR that's handling the outside lighting and the inside lighting together in one space. You will see ghosting, that's right. So if you've got people in the image and you don't want them to appear as this person does, you'll need to ask them to stand still. One great advantage to the mobile app is that it's basically a remote control. So you can pop it down on a tripod, go into the other room, and capture it. And later this week, we'll be giving some demonstrations of how that works with the mobile application. Certainly, though, there's some pretty exciting implications for our industry as we look at this.
Can you just show us the Zenith and the nav data, please?
I'm sorry?
Can you show us the Zenith and the nav data?
Yes. The Zenith is pretty straightforward. Now, the Nadir does have a fairly sizable hole, as would be expected. We at Google are going to accept this, but I will say that everybody's working on making these smaller, and over the next couple of years, I think you'll find that these holes are shrinking. It is what it is. And now let's look at another one. So this is the 360 cam from Gyroptic, and the founder of the company there. You can see his selfie. 4K shots, also HDR on device, delivered in less than 3 seconds. $499 price point. Both of these partners are with us today. They'll both be sharing more details. So we think this is a very exciting future, and we're excited to roll this out with you. So we've got some more exciting things to cover today. A little bit of a lag here. So, show of hands, who's familiar with the Views platform today, please? Okay, about half, it seems like. For those of you who are not aware, Views has been basically, it was founded as like this spherical photography platform community for publishing to Google Maps. We last year added support for flat photos as well. But there's a lot of love within the Google Maps team for this product. We believe that Google definitely needs to serve as a home not only for professionally produced commercial photography, but also for people that just have a love of great places. And so for us, Views has been that product and that platform that we've supplied. At the same time, we have taken stock of feedback that said, again, it's a little hard to associate this with Google Maps. People see my Views profile. Why is it that when they see my images on Google Maps, they're driven to some website called Views? And so we've decided to help address that issue as well, and also bring you more closely connected with the Google Maps infrastructure, which is obviously the very large product in our midst. So in mid-August, we are proud to announce that Views profiles will become Google Maps profiles. These are being reintroduced directly in Google Maps. They're going to look a little bit different just because we're matching the Google Maps aesthetic. But the key pieces are there. Your images are going to show up. You're going to be able to view them. You'll be able to see your total view counts. All the important elements will remain intact. And we think this will be easier for you. If you choose not to represent yourself as a street view photographer, you certainly don't have to. Google Maps is a great brand that you can position yourself next to. But Views is not just a user profile. It's also some great tools for publishing lots of images and editing their locations. So the exact Views uploader that you may be familiar with is remaining intact as we bring it to Google Maps, so there will be no changes there as well. I should also just make clear that all of the images that you published that were Maps approved will continue to live on with no change. There's no change. And if you've published images that were not Maps approved, you'll continue to be able to access them through G+, just as you can do today. Because this is a Google Maps branded product, images that you published that were not approved, which is really the exception rather than the rule, those are not something that we obviously want to be supplying underneath the Google Maps umbrella, but you'll have the complete access to delete and edit them just as you always have through G+. And then finally, we're bringing something very exciting new to the table for Google Maps, which is the ability to publish images and have them go live instantly. So in terms of being able to share a link and not have to wait around for moderation, this is a great advantage for us. I just want to make it clear that these images all still go through our moderation pipeline. So, and we do check for some things automatically up front, so there's not this great risk of abuse. But it's a great opportunity for you to be able to engage more directly and immediately with your clients, not have to wait a couple of days. So, we've covered Views. We've covered the new Street View app. We're also going to pick on Business View today. So, show of hands, who's familiar with Business View program, please? Okay, basically everybody. Okay, that's great, or the majority of you. Sound like a broken record, but introducing Business View has been a challenge for people. They have to say it's sort of like indoor Street View, so I think you can probably imagine where I'm going with this one. But we've also heard that it's sort of a case of Goldilocks and the Three Bears for a lot of photographers deciding whether or not to join Views or Business View. You know, for Goldilocks, the soup was either too hot or too cold, the bed was too firm or too soft. Well, we had a bit of a case of that with Views and Business View, and that Views provided a lot of flexibility for photographers, but didn't bring the commercial tools that the Business View program offered and some of the advantages in terms of exposure and leads. Business View program offered those, but was often recognized as being a little harder to operate within than the Views program. And so I'm thrilled to announce that in mid-August, Business View becomes Street View Trusted. We've heard your feedback. We understand that trusted association that you already carry as a trusted photographer, which is what the TIP stands for, is a key element. But we are aligning you directly with this brand. So you'll be able to represent yourself as a trusted photographer. So for those of you who are TIPs today, there will be no change. Your certification will remain intact. You'll be able to continue representing yourself that way. That said, we've removed a lot of the red tape in this program. We've made a lot of things simpler that I'm going to go over in the next few slides. But I want to emphasize that our degree of stringency as we look at quality is not being reduced. If anything, it's being slightly elevated. So the barrier to entry in terms of producing great images and acting professionally with clients is not going to make this such that everyone that you know can join the program. This is really only going to be for the best of us. So let's talk about how we're simplifying now. There's a lot of things that we're doing. First of all, the program used to have a lot of categorical restrictions. We, as Google, have historically said, you can't shoot these types of businesses because we might shoot them in the future. We're not doing that anymore. With the exception of sensitive locations, which we're working through with our legal counsel and also possibly hotels, the rest is now open. So that means public parks, that means transit stations, whatever you want to shoot, as long as you have permission to shoot it. We are certainly not going to stand in your way, so you're welcome to do that. And to be clear, we're not going to ask you to go and shoot specific places when the service and app launches. So there's really no difference. You have the freedom that you've had with the UGC platform, with the Views program. You now have that with Business View. We've also historically required that you publish flat photos as part of being a tip, being a trusted photographer shooting businesses, and you don't have to do that anymore. So you can just shoot photospheres, and that is sufficient. We have limited the countries in which you can operate in. So if you were certified in Germany, then you could only shoot in Germany. Or if you were certified in whatever the country is, you could only shoot in that country. That's not the case anymore. You can now shoot anywhere in the world with the exception of China. And again, all of this happens August 15th, so you got to bear with us. We're as excited as you are, but we got to get through the next couple of months. And then finally, we're bringing you the advantage that the new mobile app has, which is instant publishing through the mobile app. So you can actually, as a trusted photographer, if you so choose, with these spherical cameras, shoot directly with the app and publish, and it will count toward, your participation in the program.
Excuse me.
Yes?
Do you have to follow the patterns like before, like going through the door, walking around, or you can use that shot in certain areas only?
We are very much simplifying as well. The patterns are being removed. The question was, do we have to follow the exact same patterns? We have some requirements that are being. So what's important to us is that you maintain a very close proximity between the photospheres. The exact distance is being worked out. And we ask that you don't drive people through walls or right through a large piece of furniture. And there is a third requirement, and that is that you don't ask people to traverse great distances. I guess that's the same as the first. But there are no other requirements. You don't have to shoot specific parts of the businesses anymore. So we think that's a big win for you as well.
Are the POIs also still required?
They are not. The POIs, that is the flat photos, are no longer required. What we've done principally here is said, you know your clients, and your clients know their needs better than we do. So we're not going to sit here and tell you what your clients need at this point. You can determine that with them.
Good job.
Thanks. And then finally, in terms of contracts and that sort of thing, that is something that will be left between you and the business. We ask that you engage with your businesses in some type of agreement that signifies there's mutual consent, but we are no longer going to be dictating what the nature of those contracts look like, so that'll be determined on a photographer basis.
I have a question. How does that affect the copyright ownership of the images?
So the images published through the Business View program and continuing with this editor have historically always had ownership rights transferred, and that's not changing. So, and that's important for these folks. So if this is not of interest to you, then it remains that the Business View program, as it's rebranded, may not be the right. It's really a commercially oriented program. It's a very good question, though.
Well, it seems to me that it would be enough to transfer the rights to use the images as they need to the business rather than transfer copyright in its entirety.
So that's a good distinction, one that we are not concerned with on our end. So as long as you move the images over to their account and extend to them perpetual rights,
yeah.
Whether that is actually ownership or a license is not something that we'll get in the way of.
So transferring copyright is no longer required?
Transferring copyright is not. Transferring some perpetual rights is required.
That's a huge improvement. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. And then the last thing that I was going to say is you don't actually have to have commercial intent. You simply have to have mutual consent. So as long as you've engaged with the property has understood and built an agreement with you,
And we have a location release.
and you have a location release, then you're set, you're covered. Okay, so we've covered a lot of things that are happening by mid-August. Let's talk about a couple of things that are happening after mid-August. And this is the one piece of the presentation where I'm sympathetic. I realize that this is going to be hard for some of you. In order to do this, we were not able to bring over the Views manual Constellation Editor into Google Maps. And so we are actively working on a new manual connectivity editor for people who are not part of the Trusted program. And so we're working on that. And we've got a next generation solution that we'll be bringing to you later this year. We're very excited about it. Using the muscle that Google has in terms of computer vision, we'll be bringing something to you, including an automated version of this that automatically brings those photospheres together with the ability to modify them if they're not organized the way that you think they should be. So we're very excited about that. It is one of our highest priorities. And so we just need to be clear that in mid-August, when this transition takes place, there will be some period of time thereafter where you might want to consider a workflow that is focused around individual photospheres that might be automatically connected later. Or else we would invite you to consider the Trusted program, where you'll continue to have that capability. And again, I just want to emphasize that this is extremely important to us, and we are working on it. So some other things coming. We've heard from the business view photographers that having the Salesforce is great, but what about on mobile? We're bringing our own version of this directly into the mobile application at a later date. So you'll be able to directly see access to leads that are appropriate to all trusted photographers, and also leads that are specific just to you. You know, a business in your area said, I want a trusted photographer, and we think you're the right match. So we'll be surfacing those in the mobile app for you. We really want this to be your mobile productivity counterpart, the ability to go out and potentially with these spherical cameras do everything on site. Frankly, even carry the app with you, even if you choose to continue shooting with the DSLR system. You can still show the images that you previously published. You can still track leads. We think this will be a valuable tool for you. And the fact that it's in the same app that your clients can download and get the sense of reputability that this is the Street View brand, the same one they can tell everybody about, we think will go a long way. Now there's a lot of moving pieces to make all this happen. Getting all of these new changes into the Google Maps app is also something that we're actively working on. It's not necessarily something that's going to make it in time for mid-August, but we are bringing your profile and your visibility of your photospheres to the Google Maps app. Now for those of you who are business view photographers, that's not really news. Your images have always shown up there. But for those photographers who are not publishing through that program, this is news. Your images today do not show up in the Google Maps app, and they will be showing up in the Google Maps app. So we're very excited about that. And then finally, look at the 3 products that we've covered today. The Street View app for non-trusted photography use, the Google Maps publishing. Both of those had instant publishing. The third leg of this was the actual trusted photographer use. That's gaining instant publishing later this year as well. So in essence, all 3 capabilities for publishing will satisfy that instant publishing requirement that we've set for ourselves. So actually, we have no more news. We thought that would be plenty for the day. This is the new logo. We're really excited about it. We think it's a great counterpart to Google Maps, even though it stands out on its own at this point. We're going to be wearing this with pride, and we hope that you'll join us in doing so. You can look for these changes in mid-August. We're going to be around the rest of the week to answer questions. We're sure you're going to have questions. But we also have this opportunity with my colleagues who, I just want to let you guys know, it's like 3 or 3:30 in the morning for these guys right now. They've been very kind in joining us. Not going to show video of them as they're probably all sleepy-eyed right now. But they're on the line to answer your questions with regard to JUMP and the Expeditions program. And I'm here to answer your questions for the next few minutes with regard to the things that we've announced today. I see there's a few hands up. Thank you.
Everyone can hear me. I was quite interested when you said about the perpetual sort of license that the business
Yes.
can always get access to the photos. That's great. What's the agreement with Google for making sure that Google always has this stuff online available? I mean, is there any actual agreement about that?
So Google, there's multiple ways to interpret the question. And I will rotate, thank you, that's a good point. So the question was, how does Google ensure to make any commitments that these images will always be available? So there's really 3 ways to answer that. Images that are published to Google Maps and are approved will always have a distinct Google Maps URL. So you can always provide that. Actually, there's 2 ways to answer it. So you'll have access to that URL. We're not going to pull that URL down for you unless it's found at a later date that you're not in compliance with our terms of service. That's not likely to happen. The second consideration is whether or not they're surfaced in search results. And being Google, we're always working on making sure that the results that are presented to interested explorers are most relevant. And so that literally changes on a daily basis. And so we cannot make commitments that those images will or will not be surfaced in certain capacities in search results. But you can count on those images having those distinct URLs so that you can share them.
Charles,
Yes.
I'm publishing sometimes panoramas which are shot a couple of years ago, showing places a couple of years ago. There's no possibility to put the right date in, so it pops up on Google Maps as it would be taken today. Can we change this somehow?
It's a great suggestion. I think after the talk here, I'll start taking notes of people's feature requests. I can't make any promises today. I think it's a very reasonable request.
But it's important because you're showing the world, and you should show the world in the right time frame.
I agree.
Do this in Street View already. It's one of my favorite features is being able to see how I can see every street in New York like 5 years ago.
I agree. So the observation was Street View does this today. The time machine capability is very valuable as you can go back in time. We've seen this ourselves with tragic events in the world where buildings have been destroyed. Google can't canvas everywhere, as you heard from Luke yesterday. The ability to go back in time from other users' contributions is extremely valuable. So I just want to emphasize that that's a very reasonable suggestion.
Hi, next question. It's regarding Google's Google View. Sorry. For the photographers, they're not in the program, so they're not trusted photographers. What would be was a solution for them to be able to present the business of their customers? So let's just say they made a panoramic tour and the customer requires so that the tour will be linked to Google and to Google Street View. But we're not in the program. So anyway, the process is taking a long time to be approved as a Google Trusted Photographer, and the customers are waiting. So they want to be in. We as a photographer, as photographers, want to do that, but we can't. So do you mean that in the future will be it's changing?
Both are being simplified. I think there's 2 things that I can comment on there. One is that I agree, enrollment has been taking historically a lot of time in the Business View program. We've already dramatically simplified that. It's now a matter of a couple of days for photographers who apply, and we're further simplifying it. It should be a matter of hours for people by mid-August when we roll out these changes. Second, however, with this ability through the Street View application to reassign ownership, which is something that will happen shortly after launch, you can do that without being a trusted photographer. So what we require is that if you use the Trusted Photographer program, that you have a contract in place, but or if you transfer ownership. So as long as you have a contract in place with the user, you don't have to be a trusted photographer, with the business, you don't have to be a trusted photographer. You can transfer ownership over. And so the distinction between that and the trusted program is only the trusted program shows up inside See Inside. But these images will still appear inside the place cards if they're ranked in such a manner that they're considered relevant. So if you associate with Sydney Opera House, right? Yeah. They'll still show up in the photos, and they could potentially be at the top of the stack if they're good images that we feel are relevant. And so in that way, it's a very similar presentation to the Business View program.
I was just asking because Mr. Vincent presented yesterday the Street View, and he presented also a tour that was embedded from somebody, from a restaurant, just in the Google Street View. So without being that person to be a trusted photographer. And that's why I'm asking.
I'd have to look at the exact embed that you're referencing, but you can today, you can access images that are on Google Street View and you can embed them in websites, so that's not changing. So the distinction here between the trusted program or not is whether or not you show up and see inside. Otherwise, you're going to show up in the same results cards. You're just going to show up inside photos instead of see inside.
How about bigger tours? Like, if you have a huge constellation right now, you have to go through the entire workflow again if you want to change few panoramas. Is there any flexibility coming up to that to just edit a part of the entire virtual tour?
So we are not in a position to share it today, but I am allowed to speak to the fact that we are dramatically rewriting a huge piece of what the Business View desktop editor has historically been. We'll be rolling that out in the next couple of months as well. There are a lot of changes in store there, all aimed at making this more reliable and simpler.
Okay.
What's the chances that we get to survey our coordinators? I've been through, I think, 3 or 4, and I think it'd be really beneficial if you sent out questionnaires to us and let us send them back 3 times a year.
It's only fair, I think. I mean, that's a good suggestion. Yeah.
You have no idea.
Yes.
Are considering renovate the equipment of the photographers?
I'm sorry, could you ask the question? Here's the microphone so we can all hear you.
Thank you. The photographers need to renovate his equipment, cameras,
Oh, no, there's no requirement to. So you can continue using your DSLR kit exactly as you always have. You can still publish your stitched equirectangular images to Google Maps. You can still publish them through the trusted program. No changes required. And that, just for those of you who haven't checked in on the Business View program in the last 6 months, it now allows you to use any hardware you want and just stitch the resulting, just upload the resulting Equirecs without having to use Business View specific hardware.
Is that for all images or only a certain percentage of images?
It's for all spherical images.
How do you do it?
I'm sorry.
You just upload it to the console?
Just directly in what we call our NICS editor, that is the interface for the Business View program. You can choose an option which is pre-stitched, and that is our term for equirectangulars that are already stitched together. So use whatever hardware you want, as long as they're compliant with our qualitative standards, then they'll be accepted.
That's in a Canon moderator?
That's right, in your interface as you go through the publishing flow. The question was where that exists in the Business View interface.
So just to follow on from that, so the equipment that people can use includes the 2 examples you showed earlier now, is that correct?
Yes, at launch, I should have clarified, I appreciate you asking the question. At launch, the NCTech Iris 360 will be considered Business View compatible. We love the gyroptic camera as well. That is not going to be considered compatible with the Trusted Photographer program.
Okay, but your very first slide was emphasizing how important quality is to you now.
It is.
Do you see massive holds in 360-degree imagery is actually an improvement in quality?
That's a fair question. You're not.
It's a very fair question because you're in an extremely powerful position where you're actually almost defining to the world what quality is in 360 imagery, and you're actually, I believe you're in danger of giving people very low quality imagery.
Yes.
It's setting the bar so low that people in this room just won't be able to compete with someone who can go out and press a button and produce something like that.
Yes.
Well, the quality of the imagery is, in our mind, very good. And I understand that some of you will disagree, and you can certainly always distinguish yourselves as being the photographers that shoot the full spheres. In any open competitive market, there's a range of different capabilities from different providers, different artists.
So you're defining good quality as poor quality.
Well, that's a subjective opinion.
No, it's
real.
There is such a thing as quality, and we all know what it is in this room.
Sure.
Don't tell us what the quality is.
You're going to get egg.
Worked hard to
I'm sorry that you guys feel that way. We've been listening to the community, and we're doing the best that we can to bring great technology to the forefront. We reevaluate what that means every so often. We'll continue to do that.
Yeah, I had an actual question. The ability to publish flat views is that going to be possible in the same context as the spheres, and like the business view and so forth?
Business View is no longer, the Trusted Photographer program is no longer requiring that you add those images. So you will be able to continue publishing them. We're actually going to encourage you in the coming months to do that through the GMB application. That will
Yeah,
be
no, in some cases, business would rather be represented by a beautiful kind of perspective print rather than a sphere. And I'm wondering if that's,
so we're not
going to be
changing
any technological barrier to using those in the program.
We're not changing the program so that you can exclusively shoot, as we call them, POIs. So you have the option of shooting POIs, also known as flat photos, and photospheres, or just photospheres. You're certainly welcome to also shoot flat images. They're just not going to count toward the program.
One of the major differences right now between
When you say you expand to shoot in any country,
you said you're expanding that anybody who's in the program can shoot in any country. There are some countries where business trusted photographers are not available by now. Is anything changing in this way?
Well, so, I mean...
Like in Austria?
So when I say we're opening it up, we're making it available. So we're not going to advertise photographers that don't exist. So. Yes?
Few questions, just one with like that. First of all, I'm a trusted photographer. I want to thank you for your job. It's been wonderful working for you guys. And the Constellation work is really amazing. It's actually amazing. It's been pinpointing correctly all my images very easy. So moderation it's been a breeze.
Great, I'm happy to hear that. The comment was that Constellation Editing is working better lately.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much for that.
Great, thanks.
Second of all, just want to clarify how the business photographer is going to be different with the regular people. So now, what is the difference is that when they publish a sphere, is that going to be on their business profile the way that it is with a trusted photographer, or is going to be different just in the views?
It is, there's nothing changing in terms of how images are surfaced. If you publish with Business View today, you get the See Inside distinction, and the ownership, and the ownership rights have changed ownership. So we've talked about the distinction that Sam Rohn commented on, but otherwise that's largely staying intact. If you publish photospheres today via the Views platform or the Photosphere camera app, you have the ability to associate images with a specific business listing, so that when people search for Sydney Opera House, they can find the images associated with that. That capability exists today and will continue to exist. The distinction that we think, that we've heard is most valuable is this trusted photographer distinction. To be able to show that Google lends its credibility to you as your own brand. And so that's really where we think that we can continue to.
They're not going to show in the business profile, they're going to show on the maps only.
By the business profile, do you mean the specific web pages?
No, it's, when you search in Google Maps right now for a business, it shows up, it has
Oh, no. So they do show.
And it has See Inside. So that See Inside is only for trusted photographers?
See Inside is only for trusted, but right next to See Inside it says photos in those cards. And those images will show up in there as well, not just on the map.
Those will be panoramic as well?
Panoramic, that's correct, yeah.
Okay. And my second question is that there's a lot of countries that are not in trusted photographer program,
yes,
but they're going to be open now, so that means we can shoot places like Chile or Argentina?
That's correct. As of mid-August, we'll make announcements on that date. We think that's going to happen.
Are you going to have trusted photographers in those areas as well, or not for now?
I just want to summarize the questions for everyone else who's hearing. The question was, can you shoot, just to recap, can you shoot in any country, including like Argentina? The answer is yes. The second question was, do we have photographers in all of those countries? No. So what we're doing here is our index, where we still show what photographers are available in your area. That's going to stay as it is. If there's no photographers in your area, then it's going to evidence that. We're simply inviting you to represent yourself as a photographer in any area that's appropriate.
That's a great job. Thank you guys for that.
You're welcome.
Jeffrey? So you do some special captures of places using your own rigs. Will you open that up to third-party cameras to allow?
Yes, that is categorically opened up as of mid-August. So the places that we have held offline for ourselves, that is completely a removed restriction.
Thank you. How about real estate? Could you use?
Google Maps is not an appropriate platform for real estate. We have earned user trust when it comes to privacy, and we don't intend to infringe on that.
Real estate changes too. It could be sold next month, and then it's relevant.
Sure. And you may have very good intentions. You might say, well, I published these images while the house was for sale. But the reality is we can't tell whether or not you took those offline, and the future homeowner may not want the world to know what the house looks like. We're simply not supporting real estate. We have no plans of supporting real estate. Yes?
Regarding the changes in the contract, you said that you're not requiring a Google contract that we're currently presenting to every customer right now. Is that correct? That's the only way?
Yes, so to summarize, the question was that whether or not Google is removing the requirement for contracts that are Google authored. Yes, to clarify, Google today requires that you use a Google authored contract when you engage with businesses. We will be requiring that you have contracts with businesses. We are not going to be supplying those contracts for you. We will not be providing templates. So just given the nuances of every individual deal and geography, we've decided this is something where you know your client's needs better. There are a lot of templated contracts out there. You're welcome to use whatever suits your needs best.
I just want to follow up on my question here. That contract has a lot of value because it defines who Google is and what they do, and what I am as a photographer, what I'm promising, and what Google's promising.
Yes.
So on one page, but I don't know that I could, as a photographer, say what Google is promising to do or not do.
So I have a good answer for you there. The question was, how can we, how is it that we're going to have certain requirements on Google's end and not be providing that in a contract for you to share with your customers when essentially you, the photographer, are on the hook for some of these applications? And the answer to that is we're bringing together a new Google Maps publishing policy. It's a ready policy right now, but we're going to roll it out in mid-August. And it has a very clear explanation of what your commitments that must be included in the contract include. So as long as you check those 4 or 5 boxes in the document, you'll be fine.
Is that to prevent sub-agencies? Is that why you guys are doing this?
We just want to make sure that the business's rights are respected. So there's certain, you all are certainly not, the bad apples in the group, but there's potential for people to misrepresent their relationship with Google, to misrepresent, their obligations to make sure that images are approved for Google Maps. We need to look out for the businesses. So we are requiring that those be acknowledged in the contract, but they're very clearly spelled out. It's not legalese. It's very easy to read. There's a few bullet points in our new policy that explain what those requirements are.
Please, if you want to ask a question, raise your hand. The person who has the microphone has the right to ask a question.
I also want to just remind you that we've got some friends that are up in literally the middle of the night here that are happy to answer questions on VR. So if you have questions related to JUMP and the announcements at Google I/O, we would welcome you to ask them while they're with us. And if there are no questions, maybe we can. I'll just.
Lots of questions.
Okay, lots of questions to answer. About JUMP. Okay.
Just a quick question about the pricing for shooting a business that is not in your country. How it's going to be? Is there any rules or?
Yeah, so pricing is changing from being a requirement, a minimum pricing, to being a recommendation. What we've seen is that our requirement was really only viewed as a recommendation anyway. And again, this is the sort of thing where with new technologies coming out and potentially making your life easier, we don't want to make it hard for you to close the sale because we're requiring certain price points. So they're just merely recommendations.
Last quick question, is that the hotel program is going to still be going to agencies, or now we're going to be able to shoot those as well?
I'm sorry, could you rephrase the question in the mic just so that everybody can hear it? Thanks.
Do you have the microphone? Do you? Please, do it in an order. It's going to be much easier for everyone. Any other question? Oh, you have a question.
Thank you, Luke. It's a quick question. It's just the hotel program was only assigned for agencies.
Yes.
Is that going to still be that way, or are we going to be able to shoot them as well?
We're still confirming the answer, so I can't give you a commitment today. Most likely that will remain off limits. So it will remain a separate program for trusted photographers. But we can't commit to that today. We're still looking into that.
But as a trusted photographer, can I apply to start selling that?
The question was.
Yeah.
The question was.
I have a bouncer outside. I never knew that I need one inside.
You're doing fine. You're doing fine.
So the question was, do you just to answer this though, whether you need to apply for the hotels program, and the answer is we'll continue to invite members to join that program if the program persists by looking at our top performers in many standards, not just volume, from the trusted photographer program. Yes.
Okay, with Oculus and other VR, excuse me, VR developments becoming mainstream,
yes.
Are you considering introducing stereo vision at all?
So it's a good question. We are working with the cardboard team right now. We're not going to make any commitments for when. I think the observation that it makes sense to have like a cardboard mode for Street View is something that we acknowledge as well. But this is not something that we're prepared to speak to today. So certainly a great opportunity. We agree with you that would. I mean, so Google is very committed to VR. We've got folks representing VR for Google here today. And so there's no denying that Street View is a perfect complement to VR. I'm not trying to be tongue-in-cheek here, but I think we will agree with you that that's something that we see merit in and that we're working toward. Yep.
Charles.
Yes.
Aaron and Hussein sitting in the background there on YouTube, and we have Street View there. How is Street View correlating itself into YouTube? What's the correlation there? I don't really see the full picture.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. So today, Street View is really known for having geolocated images, spherical images, and that will continue to be the defining distinction. YouTube is a more community-oriented, entertainment-oriented. I'm representing YouTube here in words that might not be the way that Aaron and Hussein on the line would represent. They have added support for 360-degree video, which is a really fun experience. I think there's additional work to bring these worlds closer together. For the time being, I think it comes down to what your purpose is. If you are trying to very clearly represent places on a map that will be discoverable on a map, then Street View remains the tool of choice for you. If you are looking to create these immersive narrative experiences, then YouTube will be the tool of choice for you. There is no denying that these worlds are getting closer and closer together.
Quick question. At Google I/O, they talked about expeditions. What does that mean for us?
That's a good question. So I'll invite Aaron or Hussein on the line to speak to that if they'd like. Were either of you able to hear that question, Aaron and Hussein?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I can talk a bit about just an overview of the announcements we made at I/O with regards to JUMP, and perhaps that'll provide enough context. If not, we can get to more specific questions. So the JUMP program, for those of you who haven't yet had a chance to listen to the I/O keynote or read about it elsewhere in the press, is essentially an end-to-end pipeline for immersive 360 stereo videos. With JUMP, we are providing a camera specification, and we have a rig that we showed last week, which includes 16 camera modules in a circular arrangement. And our intention is to open up that spec so that anyone can, or anyone with enough desire to do so, can build their own. And that'll happen at some point in the summer. The second piece is the assembler, in which we use the Google Cloud and thousands of machines to take those 16 video feeds, generate many, many more novel viewpoints on the circumference of the rig that JUMP is, and use all that information along with an understanding of the 3D elements of the scene to create a perfectly aligned stereo panorama. And then the final piece is YouTube, which is getting JUMP support in the summer. So all those three combined provide a great way for capture, assembly, and viewing of 360 stereo videos, which we're calling JUMP videos. And I'll just add to that as well. I mean, from a business perspective, from a partnerships perspective, I think, Cardboard has, since its inception from last year's Google I/O a year ago, it has always been inherently a democratizer for VR. That's one of the common themes that people gravitated towards. It's been great to see in the press shortly after this year's I/O that people have understood this to be a similar move by us. In the days that we exist today, where it is difficult to create content, it's difficult to create VR content, there are a handful of companies that have this expertise, that have these
camera rigs that have the technology. What we are trying to do, plain and simple, is to make it more accessible to the public, to more companies. The intent in open sourcing the design is to have more than just GoPro. And GoPro and the partnership that we've announced represents an extremely important partnership to the ecosystem. As we all know, the majority of spherical rigs that are being developed today and over the years have been predominantly GoPro rigs. And so partnering with GoPro allows us to make the correct rig, the right sync and the right battery and all the components the pain points that we've all seen in the past. But the intent is to open source this to other camera manufacturers and to work very closely with those partners, which we're already beginning to open up discussions. So to the extent as there's other companies out there that want to discuss with us those partnerships, we're very, very willing to talk to that. And then on the consumer angle, it's whether someone takes the design and 3D prints their own as well. The intent is to make it very, very easily accessible to create content, use the assembler, open source again to stitch that in the cloud, free with our computing power, and then of course put that onto YouTube where millions and billions of people would be able to see that content.
And could either of you speak to the expeditions question as well, which is how that pertains to Street View?
Sure. Expeditions is a very, very exciting program that we also felt was, just one of those necessary, good for Google, good for ecosystem plays for us. Constantly people have said that cardboard and VR is, just one of the common themes that everyone gravitates toward is education. And so the program is going to be one where, initially we're aiming for back to school as our official launch time frame for the program. At that time, we're aiming to have hundreds of content partners that we'll be working with. The majority of the content will be panoramic images that are kind of stitched together to tell a narrative story. The intent is to have an educator, a teacher be able to tell a story through their curriculum by using various images to take kids on a digital field trip. And so whether or not that's like we've announced the American Museum of Natural History, taking you on a tour of the museum, or a teacher going in and finding their own panoramas from Street View or from a third party and creating their own trip to Egypt or Paris or whatever it is, we're going to be developing a platform where people will be able to essentially pull together this content, upload that content, and create their own expeditions.
A question about JUMP. So you mentioned there would be a selected numbers of creators that would be able to use your system at mid-August. How are you going to select those people? Who are they? They are already selected.
That's a question for you, Aaron.
Yep. Just to make sure I understand the question was, how are we going to decide which creators we onboard? We did say we're going to make this available to select creators in the summer. And it sounded like we also wanted to get the person who asked the question wanted to get more information about how many creators would be admitted to that program. So initially, yes, we're limiting this to select creators, and that's in an effort to kind of open up the pipeline in a way which ensures that it's scalable, it's quality, it meets our expectations, and something we'd want to release more broadly. We will be triaging requests that come in through g.co/jump. So if you haven't taken a look at that website, I strongly encourage you to do that. On there is a sign-up link to allow you to submit information. And the more information you can provide us, the more informed decision we can make about bringing in the right people initially who will be able to provide feedback to create a program that longer term can scale much more. So longer term, we certainly want to open this up to almost as many creators as would be interested in using the JUMP program. It is only during the summer and the initial phases of the JUMP access program that we will be somewhat more limited to select creators.
One last question.
Actually, two. At the beginning, we used to have a drop-down menu that you could just copy the code, give it to the client, and they could hook from their website back into the maps. Is that going to be available again?
So we are focusing more on now that we're bringing the Views program directly into Google Maps, we're focusing more on the Google Maps API for that capability. So to that extent, that capability exists. I would agree that's a little more difficult than the embed code as it existed in Views in the beginning. There are no immediate plans to bring that back in that capacity, but we are looking at it. There have been conversations recently where we've been discussing that.
And one more comment. I've been approached by 2 different agencies to shoot these hotels. And what I found out, they go to the lowest bidder. So I would really keep that in mind if some of these guys want to shoot hotels, because if it really goes to someone that will shoot a hotel for under $200, I don't know if you're going to really get the quality you want. I work in architectural photography, and I wouldn't get in my car for that.
Yeah, I agree. I think, so we've got this challenge, right, which is that we're not a commodity, we're professionals. You, not we, I'm not part of this, are producing high quality imagery, and you should be paid a professional's wage for your contributions. We're doing what we can to support you by aligning you more closely with the brand people recognize, giving you that immediacy to show that instant gratification of what's possible with that shoot. We're working on data that we can provide to help you show the efficacy of these contributions and how they lead to more traffic in the business. So we are actively working on bringing you those tools so that you can explain that value proposition and why that distinction for the extra $200 is worth it.
Well, thank you very much. We already went over our schedule on this. Thank you, Charles. Thank you to all the Google team. Always appreciate. So it's time for